Sometimes it's not the sound of tragedy that lingers. It's the silence that follows. Out there, in the vast stillness of South Australia, silence stretches further than the horizon. And in that silence, the name Gus Lamont echoes softly, carried by the wind that sweeps across the open plains. He was only 4 years old, a boy full of life, laughter, and the innocence that belongs only to childhood. On that quiet evening, while the sun began to dip and the sky turned shades of red and gold, Gus vanished, just like that. One moment he was there, playing in the dirt near his home. The next, gone. No sound, no cry for help, no trail leading away. Only a single footprint pressed into the sand. Small, fragile, and haunting. It's been weeks now. The police, the community, and even the Defence Force have searched endlessly, but the desert gave nothing back. The land stayed silent, as if guarding its secret. For many, hope has faded. But for one man, a tracker who reads the earth the way others read books, the search is not over. He says the land never lies, that somewhere out there, in the dust and wind, are the answers that everyone is desperate to find. This story isn't just about a missing child. It's about the people who never stopped believing, the ones who walk through the silence, trusting that every grain of sand has something to say. Before we go deeper into what this tracker revealed, take a moment to support this channel. Like this video, share it with someone who follows true crime and real mysteries. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Because stories like this, stories about truth, hope, and mystery, deserve to be heard. The afternoon of September 27th began like any other at Oak Park. A quiet, sun-washed homestead, sitting miles from the nearest town. For those who live there, life follows a rhythm shaped by the land. Long days, short nights, and an endless horizon. 4-year-old Gus Lamont was outside, playing in the sand mound near the house, a favourite spot of his. He wore his blue minion shirt, light grey pants, boots, and his broad-brimmed hat to shield him from the outback sun. His grandmother watched him from a short distance, the way she always did, certain that the boy she loved so much was safe within sight. It was around 5:30 in the evening when everything changed. She looked up, and Gus was gone. Just gone. In a place so open, where sound carries for kilometres and footprints last for days, a child had vanished without a trace. The first hours were filled with panic. The family searched the yard, called out his name, combed the mounds and the scrub, but there was no answer. No sound of crying, no sign of movement. Then one thing was found. A single, small footprint, matching the boots Gus had on that day. It sat alone in the dust, about 500 metres from the house. No other prints led to or from it. That footprint became the centre of everything, the clue that both gave hope and deepened the mystery. Because in the outback, tracks tell stories, and this story made no sense. Authorities launched one of the biggest searches the region had seen. Police, air patrols, volunteers, even soldiers. Drones swept the land, helicopters circled above. Trackers moved quietly through the bush. They covered thousands of kilometres. Still nothing. The outback swallowed its secret hole. And as days turned to weeks, the desert stayed silent, except for one man who refused to give up. A man who said the land always speaks, if you know how to listen. When most people had begun to lose hope, one man quietly entered the scene. Ronald Boland, an Aboriginal tracker from Port Adelaide. At 58 years old, he wasn't new to the harsh realities of the outback. The red sand, the endless heat, the silence. These were things he had known all his life. Boland had joined the search in the early days, moving across the land not with machines or technology, but with instinct. An instinct passed down through generations. To outsiders, he seemed calm, even reserved. But those who knew him understood. When Ronald spoke, he meant every word. In an interview, he said something that has stayed with many ever since. That little boy deserves respect to go about it on all the right roads. Police will find him. They will. They do what they do best. I do what I do best. It wasn't just a statement of faith. It was a vow, a quiet promise that somewhere, somehow, the land still held answers. He didn't make wild claims or draw attention to himself. He kept things simple. When asked about the mysterious footprint found half a kilometre from the homestead, he only replied, "I'm keeping out of that." A short response, but for someone who reads the ground like a book, it meant more than it sounded. He was confident but cautious, respectful of the police, yet deeply aware that not all truths are revealed easily. For Ronald, the search wasn't about publicity or speculation. It was about listening to the land, about letting nature tell the story. Those who worked with him said he could see what others couldn't. Faint indentations, shifted pebbles, a broken blade of grass, signs invisible to the untrained eye. But more importantly, they said he could feel when the land was disturbed, when something didn't sit right. As others packed up and went home, Boland remained certain. Gus would be found. He didn't say when or how, just that the land never hides forever. To understand why Ronald Boland's words carried so much weight, you just have to understand the man himself and the world that shaped him. Boland grew up in the vast openness of South Australia, surrounded by the traditions and teachings of his Nukuna, Narungga, and Kukata heritage. He never sat in a classroom with four walls or stared at a chalkboard. His classroom was the land itself, the red dust, the dry creeks, the marks animals left behind. He learned tracking not from books, but from his father and the old Aboriginal stockmen who worked the cattle stations. To them, tracking wasn't just a skill. It was a way of survival, of respect, of reading life in the dirt. Boland once said, "My numbers and letters were human and animal tracks." That line alone speaks volumes. For him, every footprint told a story. Where someone came from, how fast they were moving, whether they were tired, afraid, or calm. To him, the land was alive, whispering to those who knew how to listen. Unlike modern searchers who depend on drones, GPS, and infrared cameras, Boland relied on something deeper: intuition and a connection to nature that cannot be taught in schools. He explained that most people follow a footprint only as long as they can see it. But a true tracker, he feels it. He notices when a stone is slightly out of place, when the soil beneath it is freshly turned, when a shadow in the sand looks just a little too heavy. It's a lot more than just looking for prints. We are more aware of our surroundings. Those who have worked alongside him describe moments that seem almost supernatural. Where police or search teams saw nothing but empty ground, Boland would stop, kneel, and point, "He went this way." He had spent his life tracking lost people and animals through some of the harshest environments in the country. And incredibly, he had helped recover at least 7 missing individuals over his career. For many, that made him more than just a tracker. He was a bridge between ancient knowledge and modern crisis, between the seen and the unseen, between hope and the land that often swallows it whole. And yet, for all his wisdom and skill, Boland carried his gift humbly. To him, finding someone wasn't just a success, it was a duty, a responsibility to the land and to the people who call it home. He believed Gus was still out there, not lost, not forgotten, just waiting to be found when the land was ready to reveal him. To truly understand the strength of Ronald Boland's connection to the land, we have to look at where it all began, with his father, Jeff Boland. He wasn't a teacher in the formal sense. He was a bushman, a fence builder, a station worker, and a father. Ronald Boland wasn't just a tracker. He believed that every disappearance leaves an imprint, not always one you can see, but one that the land remembers. Ronald Boland wasn't just a tracker, he was one of the last of his kind. Born and raised on the vast outback stations of South Australia, he learned his skill not from books or classrooms, but from the earth itself. His teachers weren't professors, they were elders, old Aboriginal stockmen who read the ground like others read words on a page. He often said, "My classroom was wide open spaces, and my numbers and letters were human and animal tracks." From a young age, Ronald learned that tracking wasn't just about sight alone, it was about feeling. To most people, a footprint is just a mark in the dirt, but to a tracker, it's a signature, a trace of movement, mood, and direction. It tells you how fast someone was walking, if they were scared, if they were tired, or if they were looking back. He said, "An average person will follow a footprint as long as they can see it, but a tracker sees even when the prints disappear." That's the difference. Where the untrained eye sees nothing, a tracker sees a story unfolding beneath his feet. He learned to read the tilt of a blade of grass, the slight depression in the soil, even the disturbed flight of a bird, all signs that tell a story to those who know how to listen. But as he joined the search for Gus Lamont, Ronald admitted something that hit deeper than the missing boy. He feared his craft was fading. He said, "The culture is dying. Young people are too focused on what's on their phones, not what's around them." For Ronald, tracking wasn't just a skill, it was a connection to the land, to the spirit, to those who came before. He remembered the lessons his father passed down, how to find water, how to follow fresh cattle tracks, and most importantly, how to stay still when you're lost, because sometimes the land comes looking for you. In Gus's case, those lessons carried a painful weight. Ronald knew what the boy might have done, where his instincts could have led him, toward water, shade, or a quiet spot to wait. But the desert doesn't always forgive. Even the smallest wrong turn can erase you. Still, Ronald's quiet faith never broke. He told a journalist, "One day I'll tell the story about Gus." But he never said when. Maybe he's waiting for the land to tell him it's time. Ronald Boland's words echo like the wind across the red plains, steady, haunting, and full of meaning. For him, the land wasn't just dirt and stone, it was memory. Every footprint, every breeze, every broken twig told stories that most people couldn't hear anymore. He carried that belief with him as he searched for Gus, and even though days turned into weeks and the official search was called off, Ronald didn't speak of failure, he spoke of time. He said, "The land remembers, and when it's ready, it gives back what it holds." Those who know the outback say that's not just a saying, it's a truth. Many times before, people have vanished in that vast silence, only to be found months, even years later, by chance, a hiker, a farmer, a flash flood revealing what was once hidden. Maybe that's why Ronald refused to close the story. He'd seen the land take and return before. To him, it was patient. And if Gus was somewhere out there, he believed the outback still carried his scent, his steps, his small trace among the red dust and scrub. But as time passed, another truth began to settle over the community, the kind that weighs heavy. Gus's disappearance wasn't just another mystery. It had become a mirror, a reflection of how fragile life can be in the outback and how easily hope can fade when the world moves on too quickly. The police packed up, the volunteers went home, the headlines quieted. But not Ronald, not the locals who still felt something off about the whole thing. Some said they still saw lights moving at night far from the main road. Others swore they heard a child's laugh carried by the wind during the cold dawn hours. Stories, maybe, but in places like Junta, stories are all that remain when facts run dry. And through it all, Ronald's words stayed the same. Police will find him. They will. They do what they do best, and I do what I do best. To most, that sounded like hope. But to those who knew him, it sounded like a promise. When the dust settled and the helicopters stopped circling overhead, silence returned to Oak Park. The kind of silence that doesn't just mean quiet, but emptiness. Days passed with no more updates, no more press briefings, no more headlines. It was as if the story had been buried beneath the same red earth it began on. For the Lamont family, life didn't return to normal. It couldn't. A mother still left the back light on every night. A grandmother still called out Gus's name into the open air as though the wind might carry her voice to him. But nothing ever called back. The police said the investigation was ongoing, but those words, ongoing investigation, became a kind of curtain. Behind it, no one really knew what was happening anymore. Was the case still active, or was it just paperwork now? Ronald Boland, the Aboriginal tracker who had once roamed the land with quiet certainty, stopped giving interviews. Locals say he still visits the property sometimes, walking along the edge of the dry riverbed, looking at the sand the way a man reads a book. But there's something unsettling about how everything just stopped. A child doesn't vanish without a trace, not in a world where satellites map every inch of the earth, and yet here we are. Some wonder if there was something about that land, something ancient, something beyond logic, that pulled Gus away. Others think the truth is far simpler and far sadder, that the outback with its endless miles of nothingness simply swallowed him whole. Still, for every person who accepts that, there's another who doesn't. And maybe that's why months later, the story refuses to fade. People keep asking the same question again and again. Where is Gus Lamont? Not because they expect an answer, but because deep down they can't stand the thought of a question that will never be answered. In the end, the story of Gus Lamont isn't just about one missing boy. It's about the unanswered questions that haunt every silence after the search ends. It's about the people who never stop looking, even when hope becomes a memory. And it's about the quiet voices like Ronald Boland's who still believe, somehow, some way, Gus will be found. Out there, beyond the last fence line, the land stretches endlessly. It holds its secrets well, maybe too well. But sometimes the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Sometimes all it takes is one discovery, one shift in the wind to change everything. Until then, we're left with what we know and what we don't know. A small footprint, a boy who vanished, and a promise from a tracker who said they will find him. But what if they don't? And what if the land never gives him back? If you've followed this story this far, take a moment, drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think happened to Gus Lamont? Could there be something more that no one has seen yet? And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories, more deep dive, and more questions that still need answers. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Stories that matter, stories that remind us sometimes the truth isn't lost. It's just waiting to be found.